Hi, my name is Dave Reski, and welcome to this edition of In the Now, where we focus on uncovering the myths and misunderstandings of marketing and leadership with some of the world's most interesting people. And my guest today is Bruce Eckfeldt, founder and CEO of Eckfeldt and Associates. Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.
Bruce is a strategy and business coach and former Inc. 500 CEO, Inc. 5000 CEO or Inc. 500 CEO?
Inc. 500 CEO, yeah.
Wow, that's a big deal. And he's also has several successful podcasts. His specialties include using growth systems such as scaling up and 3HAG to create blueprints that clearly define structure for success for your clients. So, Bruce, we got a lot to talk about. So thank you again for being on the show.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, David. Thank you for having me.
Sure. So as you know, I like to start these conversations with what I call a mythbuster question. And, as you and I have talked, sales is near and dear to the hearts of many founder CEO, and they're usually really good at it. So I want you to bust the myth that when the founder and CEO is looking to staff up and find salespeople to help them grow, they need to find salespeople who sell like them in order to be successful.
Yeah. Lots of myths we could bust actually around sales. This one comes up for me a lot in that, I find I work a lot with these groups where you've got a very strong founder growing the company, building out a leadership team, and starts to surround themselves with senior folks in these functional areas. And sales is always this challenging one because up until or for the future, or for the history of the company, most times the founder is often either the lead salesperson or is at least kind of the closer on a lot of deals, right? That's the role of founder early in a company, is to drive sales, find customers, close customers, drive revenue. And they can be quite good at it, right? And oftentimes they're bringing in the lion's share of the revenue. And they do it in a very particular way. And a lot of it has to do with their role and their understanding of the business and the products and services they offer. And a lot of times what I find happens is when they go to expand the company, grow the company, we need to expand sales, we need to expand our sales capacity, they start looking for folks that can sell like they sell, right? Like, I sell really well as a founder. I just need to find 2 or 3 other people that can sell like that, and we can build the funnel. The challenge is that a founder can sell in a particularly is a fairly unique way because of their history, their knowledge, honestly, their power, right? They can cut deals on a close of either, a discount or, a way of changing the service or the product or adding something onto it to get the prospect to say yes, which is great when you're at that size. But when you start moving to larger, needing more people to really grow and scale the company, it's really tough to find folks. It's really kind of impossible to find folks who can sell like that. And it's impossible to really set up a sales system, a sales process that's going to support that style of selling, right? If you're cutting deals, doing discounts, modifying the product, adding things to your solution at the last minute, it's going to just wreak havoc on the rest of your operation and delivery process. So what I really encourage folks is founders who are looking to scale this up is they need to shift from trying to find people that sell like them to really figure out how to standardize the selling process and then find people that can support and excel in those various stages. So you may find people that can work in a lot of it, but oftentimes you'll find that, okay, we really need to separate out marketing, right? And there needs to be a different person or a different set of efforts and activities that are driving, developing awareness, prospecting, developing awareness, finding qualified leads that we can then put into a sales process. And then I have people who might be, really good at doing, qualification and, helping do assessments, particularly for kind of complicated technology things, doing the work that it takes to even qualify a prospect versus the actual closing process versus the onboarding process, right? All of those things might be separate, certainly are going to be separate activities, might be separate people in charge. And until you get that, you kind of break that expectation that I'm going to go out and find people who can sell just like me, you're going to run into that challenge, right? You're just going to keep running into the founder is going to continue to have to step in to drive sales and close sales. And that's going to ultimately be a really hard bottleneck and a really hard ceiling for, a company in terms of this growth process.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, Bruce, there's so much to unpack there. And I feel like as a CEO, I made all those mistakes easily in the first 10 years where I was running my company. So maybe I should just highlight all of the mistakes I made and get you a chance to react to them. But I think going back, and I see this with our clients, and I've done this myself, is one of the issues is trying to maybe early on feel like you can go cheap. You don't hire the quality that you are. You say, well, I can just get somebody who can, maybe they can just do a presentation, or they can just do prospecting. They'll just do a little piece over here, and then I can do the rest. Mm-hmm. Right? Is that common among your clients, or do you feel like they're different than me, and they kind of get the right kind of people, and it's more of a process issue?
I certainly have seen it. So I would say there's probably two initial kind of strategies that I see people trying to do, or at least that they have done before I start working with them. One is kind of I'm just going to hire, even 2 or 3 like junior, inexpensive, but hungry salespeople. And they're going to, just by force of will, they'll find prospects and bring me deals that then I can kind of close, or, I'll finish it up and polish it up and make a deal out of it, kind of thing. The other one is going the other way, is I'm going to find some, seasoned salesperson in my industry. I'm going to pay them a lot of money because they have a Rolodex, and they've got, they've got the network, and they've got the context, and they'll just essentially bring me closed deals that I'll just have to sign agreements, right? Like I won't have to do anything else because that's what I'm paying them for. So on the find the young side, or find the inexperienced, I'll say, with lower price point, they will do essentially what you think they're going to do, which is they're just going to try to sell anything under the sun. The challenge is going to be, it's going to be a mess, right? Like you're just going to get not very well qualified deals, things that are not within your target customer profile, things that are not really strategic accounts. And if you're willing to sort through, sift through a lot of the chaff to get to real kind of interesting ones, it can work. But it's a numbers game, right? You've got to have a process to put a lot of numbers through there, and you've got to be super selective in terms of the things you actually decide to spend time on as a founder CEO. So I would say out of all the cases that I've run into, that probably actually works a little bit better than paying the really expensive person. But it's and the problem is not a system, right? It's not developing a sales system, which is ultimately what you need.
Yeah. So both of those early strategies, or those strategies, are fraught with peril, as I like to say. So, the CEO, the founder, they're out selling. They've obviously done something successful to kind of get the business to some stage of clients and revenue and success. But I think your premise is that they're not that good at taking what they've done and turning it into a system. And so how do you help them, or how do you kind of think about the sales system? And I realize sales systems are pretty different for every industry. Yeah. But if you want to just make it a little generic for our listeners, how do you help them kind of unpack what they've done and turn it into a system?
Yeah. So I always drive things through strategy, right? My kind of philosophy, business philosophy, coaching philosophy is that it's kind of a strategy first thinking, meaning I need to really understand who is my target market. What do they actually want? How do they buy? What does the competition look like? What does the competition offer? Where is the white space? Like where is there an opportunity to create a differentiated position in the market? And then what do I need to do operationally and ultimately sales process wise to actually support that or execute on that? So, we can't be everything to everyone, right? So we have to choose, okay, these are the people we really want to sell. This is what we're trying to sell them, and this is how they want to buy it. And then we need to create a sales process that supports that. So depending on what you're selling, if you're selling consumer goods, that's very different than if you're selling professional services or B2B. But ultimately, I need to kind of look at what is the journey that the customer either is going on or needs to go on to successfully buy my product or service, and how do I want to influence that journey so that my product or service is the obvious or likely choice that they're going to make at the end of it. So I'm a big challenger salesperson, right? Like I like the idea of creating insight for the market through kind of learning and education, awareness that gets them curious and interested. And then I can help frame their needs and their decision-making process such that my product or service is going to fare well in the outcome that they go through. But I need to be thinking about the stages, right? I can't be closing a deal if the customer hasn't figured out exactly what they need. I can't push a contract if they haven't actually articulated what are the criteria they're going to use to make a selection. And I've got to make sure that they have the information about me and ultimately about my customer or about my competitors that are going to help them make that selection, right? So I've got to think through, I have to start with strategy. Who do I sell to? What do I sell them? How do they want to buy it? And then I've got to support a sales process that is going to do that. It's going to make sure that I'm positioning myself well relative to the competition.
Yeah, so that makes so much sense. So getting the strategy right first is really important. I imagine you have clients who just want you to, or would want someone to go in and just, write the sales script and go out and put the PowerPoint deck together and, and go, follow up on leads and whatever. But you're saying you got to have the strategy right, or else you're wasting so much time.
Well, you're wasting time. And the real reason for me strategically that's the problem is that you're going to end up competing on price, right? Like you're going to end up in a situation where you're not differentiated, and then the customer, the prospect, doesn't really have a choice other than to look at the number and say, well, I'm just going to go with the cheapest number because these all feel very similar to me. So I'm going to buy the cheapest one, right? So now I'm competing on, prices or price terms, overall price. Now I'm in a pretty bloody, competition, situation where, I'm looking at the numbers. I don't want to be that. I want to be in a situation where we're well differentiated. The customer has realized that, there is a couple of things that are really important to me in my business and what I need, and you have a unique offering that I can't really get anywhere else. And now price is not really an issue anymore, or it basically comes down to I want to buy it. Can I afford the price you have? Not are you cheaper or more expensive than somebody else, right? And now I'm in a differentiated position, and I can command the price. And then you just keep increasing your price. Like as you focus on, as your prospecting gets better and better, and you're focused on better and better kind of core customers around who you're bringing in terms of leads, you can keep increasing your price because you have no competition on this area. And you just find people who the solution you're providing is more and more valuable to them, and they're willing to pay more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. I can really relate to that on the digital marketing side, because when we have clients that don't have the strategy baked, where we see the problems show up on the marketing side is the ads, the click-through rates more expensive, the conversion rate's lower, the cost per lead is higher, the conversion to qualified lead is lower. So all those problems happen when you don't have the right messaging, you don't have the right differentiation, you don't have the right strategy. I would imagine on the sales side, when you're coaching your clients, you're seeing the same thing. Your attrition of new salespeople is higher. Their conversion from their prospecting to a qualified lead is lower. They can't take a raw lead and qualify it and get it into the sales funnel very well. Do you see those kind of metrics, happen, when they don't have the strategy baked, or when they do have the strategy baked, it's much better?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of joke that a lot of times I'm looking at sales funnels and sales processes, and it's kind of this column, right? Like there's really no drop off. Like I'm trying to push all the prospects through the column the whole way until I get to the end, and then I'm only closing 1% of these things, right? So the volume of work that I'm putting into my sales process is significant, right? Because I'm trying to push every single lead as far as I can, because I don't have any filters or qualification system, because my filter is basically, do you have money? And I want it, so I'm just going to keep pushing you, right? A really good sales funnel, is a fairly severe, dropping off, right? So I want to see significant drops early in the funnel, because I've got very specific, objective qualification metrics that tell me early, look, this prospect is not going to end up as a strategic, high value, high priced, high profit customer, right? And so I want to move them out as quickly as possible so I can focus then on the ones that are. And then if I look at the kind of the shape of the funnel, and that is my investment, And if I can trim funnel, right, if I can make that funnel smaller, it's less time, energy that I have to spend on sales. So I actually don't need to spend as much on sales if my qualification is really good. I
Wow.
can only do that if I have a good strategy. All right. So
Yeah.
that's why it comes back to strategy for me.
So the narrow funnel validates that you have a good strategy. You can kind of quantify that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's super powerful. Let's come back to our premise of the CEO as founder. How much time and effort, and I didn't realize we're going to be generalizing here, does it take to kind of convince that CEO founder that they're not the best ones to, or maybe they need help, or they need a new strategy for setting up a sales process, and maybe they can't do it themselves, or they don't want people who sell like they sell?
Yeah. Well, so I guess in terms of the time it takes to convince them, it kind of depends. I mean, some of it is their experience in general. I find CEOs that have been through this a couple of times or that have had multiple leadership roles are much more likely to kind of understand that and make that shift. And oftentimes it's they know that's the case. They just don't know what to do otherwise. So it's usually kind of coming in and helping them see, okay, look, this is what we really need to do in terms of sales and sales process and why strategy is important. And once they kind of see how that stuff connects, they're like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. We need to do that, right? They'll shift once they see a solution for how we're going to do it otherwise. If it's a first time founder CEO and they haven't had a whole lot of professional experience, they haven't been through the cycle a lot, it can be harder. Usually I would say it is about a level of confidence and a lot of the challenges that first time founders have when they start moving into more of a CEO role is they're scared, right? They've never been this role. They don't want to screw it up. They've put a lot of time and money into this, into this company, and they want it to work, but they hold on to things just very, very tightly. And it just takes a while for them to understand, to trust themselves, to trust the team, to trust the process, to actually start trying things in a different way and taking some risks and learning from it and evolving. And the good ones will get vulnerable and will risk it and learn how to kind of recover from failure and try things and work more on experimentation. The ones that don't typically will hold on to pretty tightly, and it just becomes a bottleneck. They just won't grow that far. If it's venture backed, then you get a situation where, a year or two later, the board will step in and they'll start making some changes, and it will be a forced change. But the better ones are able to kind of see that early and start working it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that makes total sense. So how do you get them to kind of stay the course? So you help them create the sales process, maybe help them with the initial hires. You've got this whole process working, but I imagine that founder CEO is still saying, I'm the best sales guy here still. And they're probably still out there selling. They're the ones closing. They're comparing their numbers and their metrics to the other guys. And I know a number of CEOs of young companies that are still doing this. They're competing with their sales team, right? And their numbers are always better. And they're like, well, why should I keep that guy or that gal? Because, I'm a better salesperson than them. How do you set up the whole process? You got the system, and the CEO is benefiting from this because they're getting better leads and they know how to qualify. The presentations are better. So they're even better than they were before, perhaps, but they're still competing with the rest of the team. How do you get them to let go of that totally to the point where they're saying, no, you execute, I'm going to step into a new role here?
Yeah. Yeah. So it comes up in different ways. I would say there's kind of the question of how do they want to stay in sales or not, and why? There is a fairly honest, frank conversation I will have with founders as we start to grow the business is, what role do you want to play in the bigger company, right? And some founders do want to they want to be the CEO, they want to take on that leadership role, they want to evolve and kind of grow with the company, grow themselves along with the company. In which case we have to have a conversation. They're not going to be able to sell anymore, right? That they need to step into the CEO role, and that is a very particular role around creating strategy, long-term vision, and managing the leadership team, right? And that's that within there is setting sales strategy, but it is not selling, right? Like if we're going to scale this business to a couple $100 million, as CEO, you're not going to be selling anymore, right? You need to focus on marketing and sales strategy. So there's that conversation, and if they decide yes, they want the CEO role, then we're going to shift them out of sales. if they really decide that, you know what, I really like sales, I have a love and passion for sales, I want sales to be part of my ongoing role, then we need to figure out, okay, who's going to be the CEO, right? We may need to bring someone in, or maybe someone else in the leadership team is going to step into CEO role, which is fine. And I separate out ownership and founder status from CEO and SLT leadership, right? Those are two different things, and you don't need to have both. And I work with a lot of founders who are highly technical and they're expert in software development or security or biotech or something, and we want to move them into a chief science officer or a chief technical officer, or a chief product designer, right? Like we can find other really significant contributory roles on the senior leadership team for them. And if they want to stay in sales, that's fine. But then they have to be a salesperson, and they need to be following and functioning just like any other salesperson and following the same playbook and rules and things like that. And they've got to compete equally with everyone else. Like in my situation, I brought in a sales manager at one point, and as CEO, I actually was CEO and they reported to me, but then I also served as a salesperson. I had to report into them on my sales activity. So I had to do the same things as everyone else in terms of, filling out the CRM, lead sheets, reporting in. I had to follow the same playbooks, right? So I forced myself to be a salesperson just like everyone else and report into the director of sales just like everyone. And then they reported to me as CEO. So it was a little schizophrenic, but it really helped make sure that they were following the system, and I wasn't going in and monkeying with our future success by trying to skirt the system all the time, which is easy and natural, but you've got to have the discipline to not do that if you want to scale the business.
So you help them create the strategy.
So this was my company my tech company when I had it. So it was literally like, okay, I realized like we need a system, and I need someone to come in and manage the system. I don't want that to be me. I want to sell. But if I'm going to sell, I've got to sell within the system. I can't go off and be a rogue lone wolf and start selling in different ways.
Yeah. So as a coach, you're having these detailed conversations with the CEO to help them move them through wherever you find them to the right place, because you have a vision, or call it a map, a structure that you believe they need to be in for success that you've seen work over and over again. Yeah. So I imagine probably a wide variety of people. Sometimes that comes easy and sometimes that is difficult. But it probably just takes a lot of time with these with the CEOs to kind of move them through that process. How do you get them? Yeah. How do you kind of have those conversations? Are those usually in person, virtual? Like, do you mix business and personal? Is it like what's the nature of a coaching relationship?
So I have several different formats. I mean, a lot of my clients, we still do a lot of work in person. I've got several virtual relationships with international companies. I have some teams that the teams are internationally dispersed, so we can't actually everyone meet in person very easily. So it's less about the format. It's definitely about the tenor of the conversations and what we talk about. I always say when I'm working with a prospect or talking to a prospect about the coaching engagement, it's if you're not willing to have the difficult conversations, then we're not going to be able to do the work that you need to do. So it's really kind of a question on them is what do they need around comfort and rapport and safety to be able to actually get into some of these more difficult underlying issues, challenges, situations that they've been in. Because if we can't have those conversations, we're not going to do the work. It doesn't mean it always happens right away. Usually it takes a couple quarters for us to be working together and kind of for me to start to see really what the underlying issues and to develop enough of a relationship where we can start talking about that stuff. But generally my job as coach is to push it, right? Is to bring this stuff up sooner rather than later. I always say like part of what I do is put the questions on the table that you haven't answered yet, and maybe you're a little afraid to answer, and create a sort of a safe space for us to actually have that conversation either as individuals or as a team, so we can advance our thinking around that.
Wow. Yeah, that's very, very powerful when you can kind of get to that level of depth and move them forward like that. Let's come back to sales for just a second. Yeah. So we talked about, the CEO founder creating the right strategy for him or her, getting the right people, setting up the process, getting the systems. And now they're at a point where they've got to manage the thing. Mm-hmm. So how do you help them kind of move from salesperson to sales manager or CEO overseeing a sales function? And is that a difficult transition for most, or is that kind of an easy transition? Hey, I've make that easy, or is that usually hard?
So it happens with all the functions, right? A lot of what we're doing across the organization is figuring out ways in which I'm going to effectively manage a larger organization. And a lot of that has to do with clarifying roles and responsibilities, right? Making sure it's clear that the system is clear, who is doing what, and then what are the metrics for success, right? Like, how do I measure the inputs, the throughputs, and the outputs of a system such that I can see that it's working and catch issues soon, right? Like I want to have early indicators. I want to have canaries in the coal mine around my system that start to tell me, hey, something's going awry, like something's wobbling here, and we should check it now while it's quickly fixable, rather than waiting 3 months and then finding out we don't have any leads coming through, and now we're down for 3 months because it's going to take us that much longer to kind of correct things and put new stuff in the top of the funnel. So for me, it's a combination of designing the process, right? Like figuring out, what are my stages? What do I do at the different stages? What are the qualifications? How do I effectively knock things out of it so that I've got high quality leads coming through? And then roles and responsibilities. Is it clear who is doing what in there? And then the metrics that I put around it. So dashboarding the functional aspects of it so that I've got the data to be able to see things and make decisions. High level, the details in that are quite complicated and depend on the business, but I would say those are the three key things that really go into making that sales system work.
Yeah, well, it's great. It sounds like, well, you obviously have a very deep understanding of the process, the systems they need, where they're going, and that's and a way to help coach them through that. So it must feel good to be making an impact on the CEO's life and the life of these companies.
Yeah.
Do you like being a coach versus
it's funny,
as a CEO? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, having been a founder CEO and kind of had a couple executive positions over the years, there is something very powerful about having your hands in the sausage and making it, and actually being part of the team. I do realize that as coach, I have a really unique and interesting perspective in that I'm not there every day, and I work with a lot of companies, so I can kind of come in and see patterns and see situations and kind of tag things quickly that you just can't do if you're in on the day-to-day. So as much as I do get a little nostalgic for having a formal seat at a leadership table and being part of a leadership team and dedicating myself 100% to one company, the insight that I have and what I'm able to experience by working with different companies in different situations at different scales is fun, and it really is unique. Like I don't know how else you get kind of the experience and the purview that I have other than being working this kind of model. So I like it. I enjoy it a lot, and it gives me a lot of pleasure and a lot of satisfaction when I see companies actually hitting their targets and hitting the numbers and getting where they want to be. Yeah,
well, you're clearly making a huge impact on the world and these companies. So thanks for sharing your expertise today. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, and thanks for being on the show. If people want to get in touch with you to learn more about your services or how you can help them, how would they do that?
Yeah. Eckfeldt.com, ECKFELDT.com is my website. It has a lot of information on the work that I do. Bruce at Eckfeldt.com is the email address. And podcasts, it's on the website, but I have several podcasts which are kind of fun. One on services, one on cannabis. I do a lot of work in cannabis. And then psychedelics is a new one that we've gotten into. Fascinating areas of drug development and medicine and where businesses are going. It's a fascinating area. So check those out as well. Wow, I'll definitely do that. Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you, David. Yeah, have a great day. Take care. Cheers.